Hey guys, this is Tilwin, and today I'm actually going to make an intro video on rosters. So this is definitely not something for Era of Chaos veterans. Feel free to skip basically this video if you are already versed into the game, and yeah, this is going to be super introductory. And the reason for this is that I had some discussions with some of the Discord community helpers, and I heard that there are very often questions about our roster system and how it actually works. So I decided, okay, let's take this step by step, see if I can maybe explain the system a bit, and then hopefully this will help you guys understand how it works and how you can actually optimize it or understand it better. Okay, so before we talk about rosters, I actually want to talk about the two important unit characteristics for the rosters. One of them would be the unit role or class, which, as you saw, I opened the unit list, and you can see all the available classes in Era of Chaos for your units, and it's actually 5 classes. And what we are interested in for rosters is just the actual class a unit has. I don't care about other implications, where you can put them in information, what talent that unit has, so on and so forth. No, we just take it as a way of categorizing units, right? So if I go to chargers, you can find, if you do the same, you can find the chargers you have available, of course, in your inventory, let's call it, or in your unit collection. Okay, so the only important thing here is you need to get to know the class of your units in your formation. The second thing that's important, and to do this, I actually have to go inside on one of the units. Um, you can also filter based on unit faction. And in Era of Chaos, we have a total of 11 factions 2, 4, 6, 8, and 11. Yeah. And every unit has also exactly one faction. Okay. And yeah, over time, if you're not familiar with factions, you're gonna get familiar. For now, let's just look at Castle. So Castle right now has 9 units available. Of course, again, you can see here in your collection as many as you have, of course, from that faction. But again, it's very important to know for each unit also which faction it has, right? So just to simplify it, you need to know for each unit in your formation its role and its faction. Okay, so this is for the first part. Next, let's talk a bit about the roster system itself and where you can find it and what it consists of, right? So, to get to the roster system, you need a minimum player level of 24, and you can actually find this information also on the wiki page. I will leave a link for you down in the description so you can also consult that. And once you reach level 24, you will unlock the roster system. And that's when you can enter this actual roster, right? And here you will start seeing your also called rosters, which are, as we can see, categorized or labeled based on the two characteristics of the units, right? Either a class roster or a faction roster. So Castle is a faction, Charging is a role, Rampart is a faction, Ranged is a role or class. By the way, if you guys hear me saying role or class, it's the same thing, and so on and so forth. When you unlock the roster system, you will only have Castle and Charging available. And after that, I think it's every 2 levels, yes, you will unlock rosters, yeah, every 2 levels, every 2 player levels, right? Until in the end, you will have all of them available. Now, if you click on one of these rosters to open them, you will see that you will have by default 3 slots available. We will talk about slots in a bit. Um, you can also unlock additional slots by paying diamonds, and I think you also need to have a minimum VIP level. And if I'm not mistaken, but again, you can also check the wiki page. I think you need VIP 6 for the 4th, VIP 8 for the 5th, and VIP 10 for the 6th. So, yeah, unfortunately, this is another paywall functionality. So for those of you who are free to play, you will probably have to manage into these first 3 slots you have already available for you. Um, but nevertheless, to unlock supplementary slots besides the VIP, you also need to pay a specific amount of diamonds. And we will also talk about which rosters to prioritize and how to kind of take a look at it. But for now, yeah, this is basically the mechanic. Okay, so what do these rosters actually do? And to understand this a bit better, I'm going to switch to a test roster, which right now is currently empty, unpopulated. We see power 0 everywhere. And let's play a bit with the formation, right? So I'm just gonna go into my formation. I'm just gonna remove everything from here. And we're going to start from absolute scratch and build a formation for ourselves, right? So I'm going to pick a random hero, doesn't really matter. Let's make Sir Mulich. Okay, with Sir Mulich, let's go castle, because probably many of you like to play castle, and of course we want our chargers. I'm just gonna put them in. And monk, because it's also a very popular beginner unit. We are basically going kind of free to play here. So I already put 6 castle units here, and we're gonna finish off with probably another tank. Let's put another, yeah, let's put here another charger, and then let's finish off with something like, I don't know, Walking Dead. This is by no means a good formation, by the way, but it's somewhere to begin with, right? So let's assume you built your formation. The idea of rosters is that we want to improve the power of this formation. So we want to basically boost this formation, boost these units. The in-game system is a bit blind in the sense that it doesn't really look only at your current formation. If you go here into formation and you go under rosters, you will see by default you have only one roster configuration unlocked. You can also unlock multiple ones. Of course, this costs diamonds. But the idea is that this selected formation is going to be global. Okay, so it's going to be for whatever it is that you're playing in the game, whether you're playing in PvP or PvE, or regardless of your actual unit composition. So think of the rosters as something, the current roster as something global for you. So for those of you we will see who want to optimize, you may either want to keep switching that roster depending on what you're doing. Maybe today you're doing Earth Conflux and you want to optimize your formation there, or maybe you're playing something in Trial of Angels or doing some main story missions, and yeah, you want to optimize basically a specific formation. And this is what we're going to be focusing on now, right? So we have this formation, we have these 8 units. If I close, luckily the system saves it for me. So now if I go back to formation, it's still here and I can view it. And yeah, basically we want to take a look at this formation and we want to improve it. And the way the roster system improves your units is every roster that you see here, let's start with castle, basically benefits all your castle units, right? Right now we have a score of 0, a power of 0, and we see 0 bonuses for all castle units that you possess in either attack or HP. And this is what these rosters actually do. They improve your units, attack, and HP. How we improve it, and this is maybe a bit the tricky part, is by assigning castle units to the castle roster, right? So I can just go here and I can start assigning maybe the biggest power units I have available, and I just go ahead and I deploy them. And for now, I'm just going to deploy 3 of them. Of course, you want to deploy as many as possible, but for now, let's focus on 3. And we suddenly see that a score is present here, some power associated with that score, whatever this power means, and then also bonuses for your units. So basically my units benefit 85% attack and 85% health from this roster alone, but only for my castle units, okay? So you assign castle units, the castle roster, so all your castle units can benefit from it. So what does this mean? This means that even though here I put Archangel, Master Archer, and Paladin, if I go back to my actual formation, and this is not very visible, but here we can see that also my Crusader, my Halberdier, my Zealot, and so on and so forth, all my castle units also benefit from it, okay? So it's not only the units I'm actually assigning to my roster that benefit from it, but it's actually all my castle units, okay? And this is where the tricky part comes, because first of all, I can assign units to factions, but then I can also assign units to classes. And the question is next, of course, how do we make this decision? Is there even a decision to be made? The answer is yes. As I explained at the beginning, each unit has 2 roles, right? So if I'm looking at my Master Archer, it is a castle unit, but it is also a ranged unit. So let's say I were to remove everything from here and I were to put my Master Archer here, right? I'm gonna get a 28.6% and 28.6%. Yeah, it's the same amount of attack and health for my castle units. But I could also say I want to go into my ranged and put my Master Archer here. And if I do that, then I get, well, I get a bit of a smaller percent here. I forgot to talk about the bonus. We'll get to that. But the idea is that basically all my ranged units would benefit from my Master Archer, not all my castle units. Of course, for Master Archer himself, being both a ranged and a castle unit, he benefits from either roster that I choose. But this benefits all my ranged units. So if we go back to my formation and we check, we see here that I have only one ranged unit. Yet at the same time, I have 6 castle units. So from this, you should be able to tell that if I'm putting my units into the castle roster, it will benefit my formation more than if I put those units into the ranged roster, right? And it sounds like it's this straightforward. The reality is that it's not this simple. We will see how we can do optimization. But generally, the idea of roster optimizations is that you want to start with your basic roster, okay? So with the formation. So you want to look at the formation. And you want to think, okay, what units do I have in my formation? Sometimes rosters can also influence your formation. And this is where things get a bit tricky because some people wonder, okay, so if I set my formation in a way, then I just put my rosters that way and I'm done, right? The issue is that the roster system is so powerful that it actually encourages you to focus your formations on either specific classes or specific factions. And this is why faction-oriented formations are so powerful. Think about it. If I have a 8 castle units formation, then I only have to put in my faction rosters my units only into castle. I don't have to invest into Rampart, Stronghold, Necropolis, Inferno, Tower, and so on and so forth, right? I only bother about castle. But I also have to bother, of course, by the unit classes. So then I would probably have to spread my chargers, range, defensive, caster, and offensive units accordingly. Unit formations that are focused on factions are a bit easier to do, simply because we have far more factions than we have classes. So spreading around on multiple factions is much more, let's say, common and much easier to do, and that's a problem because then we are thinning things out. Besides this, we cannot have formations without specific unit classes. I would never consider a good formation a formation, for example, that has absolutely no tanks. You're not going to do that because without tanks, your units are just going to die too easily. I also cannot have a formation formed only out of tanks. That would also be silly of me. I wouldn't be able to deal any damage. And then you maybe also want support units. So this means that you might want to be careful at the roles and classes you actually pick for your formation. So maybe in this case, I don't want this Master Archer. Maybe I can find another caster. And in this case, let's say I would pick up Lich. Okay. And then, but again, this is by no means a good formation, don't get me wrong. But then, if I have 2 casters, and maybe I say, you know what, I'm not going to have an offense unit, I'm just going to use another charger, and we are going a bit, of course, premium here, but I'm going to choose the Black Knight. And then we are going to finish off again with 2 defense units, right? So at this point, I have 4 chargers, 2 casters, and 2 defense units spread amongst 2 factions. This already looks really, really good. Okay, this is a bit to get an idea on, okay, how can you build your formations while also keeping rosters in mind. Now, what's up with this core and with this power and what's going on here? To explain this, I'm going to open one of the slots. So you see that each unit has a different score. And let's just experiment. I'm going to put my Griffin in. And suddenly I see an attack and a health of 19.5% here, right? Now I'm going to switch this, so it was 19.5. Now we put Zealot, and we see 25.2, right? So a unit with bigger score leads to bigger bonuses, basically. And then if I change this with my angel, I get 29.8. Okay, so you don't really have to think about these scores as raw values, but what you can think about is that the bigger the score, the bigger the bonus is, right? The tricky thing is that this roster, so basically this total power you see here or the score itself is not really that relevant. I would say the power helps because of course the bigger the bonus is, the bigger the power. So in a way, the more power you get out of your rosters, of course the bigger the bonus is on your units. And this is something that we want. But something that's very important, the roster system does not look at a specific formation, okay? So I could make this roster super powerful, I don't know, in everything, kind of spread things around and put things however I want, just filling in slots, and I'm gonna get a lot more power. But the reality is that not all these rosters will actually benefit my formation. And this is where it becomes very important to actually, figure out which rosters you need to fill and then fill only those. And then another thing that's important is that there are bonuses, which you can get these tiny scrolls in various ways in the game. Most common way you can actually obtain them is by doing the guild map, and there are those portals on the guild map, and you can just complete those portals, and then you will get, I think, something like 6 random scrolls per portal. I think it was 6, yeah. So once you have these scrolls, once you have a sufficient amount, you can upgrade them. And of course, the more you upgrade them, the more expensive they are to upgrade. But the idea is that this upgrade helps you because it pushes your bonuses even further, right? So it improves the bonuses right now at what's called here Orange +4 by 67%. Again, you can check the wiki page for details on this. I think at this point we have all colors or all ranks filled in, and it should be easy for you to check and see what these bonuses look like. Okay. The bottom line here is that, of course, if I have my master archer who would benefit from both castle and ranged, and I have a bigger bonus on the castle, I might put it on the castle. But yeah, I think your formation influences this a lot more. Again, this is something you can keep in mind, of course. The bigger the bonus, the bigger the boost to the power, the bigger the boost to your stats. Okay? And yeah, this is basically the idea of rosters, right? So the whole roster game is that I have a set of units. I have to somehow improve my formation that's made out of units out of specific classes and specific factions. And then I'm trying to fill in those specific rosters, preferably, of course, with the units that I have. And I want to make this allocation the best way possible. And the decision is in the fact that one unit can be placed in one of 2 rosters. And having many units with different classes and factions, of course, leads to a lot of combinations. So finding the right combination here can be a bit of a tricky business. Something more advanced players try to do, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it's definitely something I'm not bothering with myself, is that there are specific units, for example, that don't really benefit from attack, right? I mean, if I have something like a support unit, then for that unit, the attack is not necessarily that important. And then, for example, for the angel, I know the angel looks incredibly powerful at the beginning of the game, but eventually you don't actually use him as a damage dealer, you use him as a support. And then the attack doesn't necessarily benefit the angel that much. The health, I would say, is debatable, but in general, if something reaches your angel, it's gonna slice and dice it anyway. And then what these people end up doing is that for specific units that are more support oriented, they prefer to give them a slightly lower priority in the roster. So they focus on their tanks and damage dealers, and then once they're comfortable with those, then whatever is left, they can focus on these remaining units. Okay, with this being said, let's just fill in our roster, right? So let's take an example and see how we can actually build it. So I'm gonna go back to my formation, and you can of course follow this up by paper. What I'm actually doing here is I'm writing down what rosters we have to fill in and how many units are impacted by those rosters. And I don't care if they're support units or not. So if we do the counting, you will see that for castle we have 1, 2, 3 units only. Okay. Wow, I made a very necro bully here. Then if we look at necropolis, obviously we have 5 units because it's the remaining units. Then we have 2 defenders, 4 chargers, and 2 casters. Okay, so with this in mind, if I go into the roster, I already know I have to focus on 5 rosters alone. Castle, charging, defensive, Necropolis, and caster. Alright, how do we fill them in? Well, we can go by a more naive approach right now, just so you get the hang of the system. And by the way, let's note down the power that I have, right? I have 6,300,000 power right now. Let's see if the roster can actually help me improve this. So I can start filling things up, and seeing as I have so many Necropolis units, I would rather naively fill in Necropolis with as much as possible. So what you can go is either go into the Necropolis and start to fill them in by the biggest power. So I can do something like Vampire and then Mummy. And the system is really nice because it orders them in decreasing score. And I can just do this manually, or I can just press instant add, sorry. And what the system does is automatically it assigns the biggest power units it can find for this roster available into the roster. Right, so right now it went and it just filled in my Necropolis. Okay, after we have 5 units in Necropolis, I go and check and I see 4 chargers. So I'm gonna say, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna go and put my chargers here and fill in with as much as possible. And again, I do the instant add, telling the system, you know what, fill this in with the best units you have. And then I see that the next one will be castle, so I just go ahead and I fill in my castle units. And then we are left with defenders and casters. Really doesn't matter the order I'm picking them at this point, and I'm done. Okay, the approach, and with this approach we actually get something like 7.29 million, which is almost 1 million power just from roster, which is a lot. Now, how can we improve this? Well, there is a mathematical way to do this, or there is a more intuitive way if you want to do this slightly better. So, of course, I have 4 chargers, and chargers are important, but at the same time, if I fill in my factions that I know are very few, I might actually end up with better results because, hey, I have only Necropolis and Castle. So, if I can fill my other rosters fully with defenders, casters, and chargers from the other factions, then maybe I can get a slightly better result, right? Because I'm using my better castle units in the castle roster, for example, right? So let's just do this. It doesn't really matter the order in which I'm picking them now. And whoopsie, I actually had this on, right? Let's just check that I didn't have any castle units here, because we really wanted our castle units into castle. Yeah, okay. So yeah, it seems that already the system, the way that we went through it the first time, yielded the same result. Okay, but this does not guarantee you the absolute best, let's say, allocation. To get the absolute best allocation, I can recommend you a tool. You can check it into the video below in the description, and it actually does the hard work for you. Because what it does is it actually optimizes these allocations to give you the best possible score for your formation. So you just have to input all your unit scores, which is no easy feat because there are quite a few units. Then the bonuses you saw in the roster in the top left. And then, of course, for your formation itself that you are trying to optimize. Okay? And yeah, this is pretty much how you optimize rosters, how they actually work. And if you check the units themselves, you can actually see, okay, not here. I would actually have to go into my units. So I'm gonna go into my units now. And if we look at my Zealot, you will see that it has 200,000 power. And if I go ahead and I remove the roster, I'm just gonna remove the castle, doesn't really matter, and I go back and I check my unit, you will see that now it has only 162,000 power, right? So rosters give a lot of power to units, and that's the whole idea. The idea is to try and improve the units you're actually using in your main formation the best using these rosters. Of course, you won't see this incredible result at the very beginning. It takes time because you need to first of all upgrade the rosters. You then need to unlock slots. And then the final thing you need to do is to upgrade the unit score. And I actually left the unit score last because it's probably the trickiest part. The idea for the unit score when it comes to rosters is, as I mentioned before, the higher the score, the better the bonus. But how do you improve a unit score? Well, if you check the wiki page, you will find that there are quite a few factors that influence the score. But I can already tell you the most obvious ones. One of them is the unit level. The second one, which is probably even more important, is the actual unit rank. I think it was tier, sorry, the unit tier, which goes from gray, green, blue, purple, +1, +2, +3, orange, and then eventually red. So the higher you get your unit level, the higher you get this tier, the bigger that unit score is. But we are not done. This is also a reason why people rank up units, adding stars, even if they don't really use the unit. And I'm not talking here about SSR units. I'm obviously using the Titan, but if we are talking about the unit like the Null, why would you bother and upgrade your Null? It's not like you're really gonna use it in the late game. So why start it up like crazy? Because each star actually improves that unit's roster. And you would say, okay, we are done with this, but no, we are not. Next, what you want to do, if the unit has Awakening, you also want to add Awakening stars. You will see them a bit later if you haven't already seen them. You need level 70, I think, to start unlocking Awakenings. Units need to be in orange tier, basically. But once that happens, you can start awakening them, and each Awakening star also increases the roster bonus. But we are not done. We also have the talent. So if you go into the talent, and basically, yeah, this is a very gacha system. It's very annoying. It takes a long time. But the idea is that for the talent, you want to get your unit somewhere around 10,000 power, because everything on top of that gets very, very, very difficult to make. And for 10,000 power, it's good enough just to, again, further increase the roster value. And then I almost forgot, you also have the skills. So you also want to upgrade your unit skill somewhere around level 8 at least. Maxing it out is going to be very difficult since we have so many units right now. But yeah, of course, the higher the skill levels, the bigger the bonus, right? And all these factors go in. Unit potential, for instance, does not matter. So it doesn't really matter if you improve a unit's potential. It's not going to make your roster score better. Okay, so yeah, this leads us into another issue basically with rosters, which is, keep in mind you want to also upgrade the units of your main rosters. And what will your main rosters be? Of course, the factions that you are going to focus on and the unit roles or unit classes. And you specifically want to focus those units that belong then to those rosters to improve the roster scores and, yeah, by extension, improve all your formation. Okay, now we still have one issue. I mentioned that the roster is global. And the question is, if I have a global roster, but I have multiple teams basically, can I make a roster that benefits multiple teams? The answer is yes, but with a small caveat. The caveat here is that this is not necessarily optimal for you. Because the idea is simple, right? The fewer factions and classes I have, and I can focus on improving those and dedicating my units specifically targeted to those, then I'm not spreading around, and therefore I can really, really, really improve those particular factions or classes. The more factions you have to dedicate your rosters to, the more spread out you are. And yeah, this is of course a problem because while okay, you are, I don't know, optimizing so that you don't really have to switch things around a lot here. It also affects your power, especially in your PvP teams, or even the actual teams you're building for the various play modes. So my recommendation is, if today you're playing Dragon Invasion, upgrade your roster specifically for Dragon Invasion and try to optimize it for Dragon Invasion. If tomorrow you decide you want to improve your crypt score, then go ahead and change the roster for your particular crypt formation, play the crypt, beat your score, and then change back to your main formation. If you're doing something like Trial of Angels, then that's a place where you can think about, okay, maybe I want to have roster that impact both my two formations, and you can also do that. And then when it comes to something like Battle of the Gods or Clash of the Gods, I think it is, the other big PvP cross-server tournament thingy, There, of course, you have free formations, so you will need to accommodate your roster in such a way that you improve all free formations. And this is the context where, indeed, if you think about support units, you might say, I may want to neglect them. But keep in mind that support units still benefit from HP bonus, and you don't want your support units to be sniped too easily by a devil, for instance. So here's something to consider when it comes to spreading your roster across multiple teams. The idea is that you can, but you should only do it where the system or well, the game basically forces you to play with three formations or two formations, and you can't really swap around. In Trial of Angels, if I remember correctly, actually you can swap around. So you do your first battle, then the second battle screen shows up, and then if you buy a slot here, then basically you can have both prepared as separate rosters. First, you play your first battle with the first roster, and then you switch to the second one. Like, for instance, here I have Astral and DM. If I play my first match with Astral and my second one with DM, I'm going to switch around. During BOG and COG, you can't really do that, so then we just go ahead and we use a global roster that benefits all my teams, and we are done. Okay? And I think this is it. If you have any questions, feel free to buzz me. Feel free to, ask for advice, support, information. I'm very happy to help. Feel free to check all the links that I post in the description. They should give you quite a bit of information about either from the wiki, the roster system, or if you want to try a more automatized way of optimizing the roster and getting the best possible power for your formation, you can also try my tool. And there is also a different video on my channel where you can actually check also how you can do that roster optimization there. Okay, and I guess that's it for tonight. Thank you very much, and I will see you around. Bye, guys.